Can I invite Adam to come and speak to us?
Jerry, thank you. Thank you, Engage Liverpool, for the opportunity to come and speak, but how do I follow that? It's an absolute pleasure to be back in Liverpool, not just because of its amazing urban structure. If you take that Ebenezer Howard diagram that Mike showed us and fold it in half, that's Liverpool's urban structure. But it's also a pleasure to be back here because of its remarkable communities that really add the flesh to those bones. These are communities that aren't just resilient, to my mind, but also wise, and have had so much done to them in the past, but have learned so much, and are able to find their way through the muddle they're presented with now, in my view. For some reason, I've lost my font, which may be a small disaster, but we'll see how we go. So I'm going to talk about avoiding conflict, because wherever you are, where there is property and people, there's going to be conflict. People care about their places, the places they are from, and people want to make money from property. So some kind of conflict is going to be inevitable. We really have lost all of my formatting somehow, and half of my words as well. So the danger of not checking the presentation when somebody else has been handling it. So my main question to start out with then is, what do you want World Heritage status for? This is a critical question, because if you take it as a badge and put it in a drawer, someone's going to take charge of it. Nature abhors a vacuum. And what will happen is the people who want to use it for negative things take charge of it, which shouldn't happen. Heritage should be a wholly positive thing. That UNESCO idea about building peace in the minds of men, which has become something different there, is absolutely critical. And from that building of shared values, and then notions of outstanding universal value, which has lost its capitalization. There's going to be a lot more of this, I can tell you. So, Edinburgh's decision. I want to talk about Edinburgh a little bit. Edinburgh's a city. It's a capital city. It's a city of 500,000 people. It's a city that's the heart of the Scottish economy. It has 3.5 million visitors a year. It has a very well-informed population who are always right about everything. So we are set up for conflict and danger and things going horribly wrong, and I sit in the middle of that. But in essence, we use our management plan process for the World Heritage Site as a means of navigating that, as a participatory process. When I say we, I mean my organisation, Edinburgh World Heritage. We're an independent charity who has been charged with the management of the World Heritage Site in partnership with the City Council and with our colleagues at Historic Environment Scotland, who represent the state party. So we have this tripartite arrangement. The council does what councils have to do. They're under huge pressure, and we try and add value to that by delivering different services for them, which we're paid for, some of which we're not. We have to go and find funding to do things from all over the place. But with the World Heritage Site consultation, even my diagram has been chewed up by this, we got out there and we asked people questions. It's not that difficult. 500 people were asked very detailed questions around how they felt, and we asked them to score it. So how do they feel about housing in the World Heritage Site? How do they feel about visitor management, the city centre economy, the quality of new buildings, the care and maintenance of existing buildings, control and guidance, feeling safe and livability? Those sorts of things that make a city, not things which make heritage, because of course people live in these places. And the outcomes start to look something like this. This is complex, detailed stuff done by two people. It doesn't take a huge team to do it. It takes time. And if you've got a university on your doorstep, they can be quite helpful too. Ours isn't yet. We're getting there with them. But what the consultation shows are some interesting things. It shows that people are concerned about how we manage visitors. Well, we know that because it's in the press every single summer. People are concerned about the quality of the new buildings in the city. That perhaps isn't a surprise either. And they're also concerned about the state of the streets because they get litter on them. So there's a range of issues there. Some are real, some are perceived. But the perception gap is really important. That perception gap has to be addressed as well in the actions that follow within your World Heritage Site Management Plan, because those are the people who write letters to UNESCO complaining about things, which in itself isn't bad, but they are real issues to people's daily lives. And that's what a World Heritage City is about. It's not just about those architectural and historical values that Ruskin and Morris forced us into, but about those daily values, about how you and I care for a place. So We are one of the key delivery partners within our city. As I said, we're a charity, but we're also community-based. There are 50-odd community groups within the World Heritage Site, and we try and talk to them as regularly as possible. We sit in between them and government. Quite regularly, we might get shouted at for something. Sometimes we might get rewarded for it as well. You take the rough with the smooth sitting in that place. But it's a privileged place to be as well. And we have a strategy for bringing that World Heritage Site Management Plan into reality. Oh, my text is back. There we go. So what is that strategy? Well, our basic idea is that World Heritage status is a dynamic force. It's something which moves, but it's there to benefit everybody. It's not just about the buildings or the spaces between them. And we connect people to their heritage. So you're creating that wonderful feedback loop of people understand what it is they've got, why it's important, and why it should be protected. And by people, I don't just mean you and me, I mean the developers, I mean the city councillors, I mean the officers who are doing their best under very tight circumstances. And we do this in three ways: through looking after outstanding universal value, through trying to promote understanding of universal value, and then building capacity and resilience within the sector. These are our choices in order to bring all of these things into reality. And they are essentially social. This is putting World Heritage to some kind of social good, rather than using it to preserve, rather than using it to promote tourism. That's the choice we've made as a city. So, how do we use those values? Well, what we're doing looks rather like the Historic Urban Landscape Initiative. But as we're a capital city full of people who know better than everybody else, we can't call it that. We smuggle it in quietly. At the most basic, to me, a city looks like this. And I learned this working here in Liverpool with front doors and streets. You go down a street, there's a series of front doors. Each dot is one of those front doors. And each line is a personal relationship in that street. And streets are this amazing network, this wonderful network of memory, of shared memories that are created together, of shared value. And when you start taking out some of those dots by demolition, or in Edinburgh's case, by Airbnb, which is just as dangerous, I'm serious, it's amazing, key safes all down key streets in the city, you start to remove that social fabric and undo that. But that is the critical layer in managing a World Heritage Site. So Historic Urban Landscape, a very useful diagram provided by UNESCO for us, looks at all different layers, from the morphology, the topography, through to the social side, through to the monuments, the infrastructure, all these different aspects, and brings it together in managing an historic city. I'm not saying World Heritage Site, I'm saying an historic city. The red boundary in Edinburgh is something we can work to and beyond, because what happens on one side is no different to the other side. The people are the same people. They don't magically become better because they're in the World Heritage Site. It's just a red line. On the ground, what does this actually mean? Well, I'm not an academic, I'm a practitioner, and I run a team of brilliant experts doing really difficult stuff. So I'm going to show 3 or 4 examples of projects we get up to. First one around safeguarding outstanding universal value, in which we look at building conservation and public spaces. The second one I want to look at or third one is going to be about promoting understanding and interpretation, how we interpret the World Heritage Site. It's an obligation under the World Heritage Convention. And then perhaps a little bit about building capacity and skills and management as well. So this is well caught in the Dean Village. It's not a typical Edinburgh building, as it's not made of beautiful silvery sandstone that some call dirty. It's made of red sandstone instead. But it has those typical Edinburgh characteristics of having more than one owner. In fact, it has 52 owners. And if one person says they don't want to repair a building, it's not going to get repaired. So what we do is we send in Fiona. Fiona is the world's ultimate negotiator. And in the course of 2.5 years of negotiation, she brought those 52 owners together into an agreed repair scheme. Now, we act for Scottish Government and give out their grants for conservation locally on the ground. We neutralise the politics behind money in conservation. And we're trusted by the local groups to do this. So working with the owners here, we're able to help shape a conservation scheme for their house. They don't think of it as being a house from 1890. Think of it as their home, the place they live. They relate to it in emotional terms, not in architectural and historical terms. And so working with them on that, we're able to bring about the restoration of this building, which again took 2 years because our funds aren't that big. We had to feed it over a period of time and train and work with the works. And in doing that, we brought the community together. Neighbours who didn't talk to each other had to talk to each other. And so we're actually using the projects to get these social outcomes. This is a part, though, of that wider spreading of the butter that Mike talked about, very thinly indeed. So rather than going into the city and spending £5 million and walking away, Edinburgh's been doing this since 1970. Drip, drip, drip of money. At the moment, it's £500,000 a year. Over 47 years, that's 1,500 restoration projects is roughly where we're at. It builds up, and it creates a huge positive effect. This is probably the biggest community-led regeneration project in Europe, which is conservation-based, that we know of. I may be wrong, Mike will correct me later, but it has tremendous effect, socially, economically, and environmentally. But we also support the wider economy as well. This is a shop front that's been restored into a trendy shop, but more often than not, we're dealing with shops that are very marginal businesses, with the shopkeepers for whom English is maybe their second or even third language. Again, difficult and negotiated stuff, negotiating their values. They want to make money, we want the place to look pretty damn good. Now, where does the negotiation lie in that? How do you get others involved to help you? In that case, a master's student did some work on shop fronts for us, understanding how they'd increase footfall and putting it into the language that the shopkeeper speaks to support their objective while supporting our objective. A more complex one, which is really around deep engagement with the community, is something we're trying at the moment. And this takes you right back into SDG 11.4 that Mike talked about. This is how we really deeply engage community in decision making. Edinburgh in the Old Town has about 95 alleyways, and those alleyways are often used as dumping grounds, literally dumping grounds, and one of our offices of one of those. And so working with the community, what we've tried to do is come up with ways of making those closes better. They're currently treated as highways and so lit from above, and in doing that, you hide the human face. That's great for motor vehicles, rubbish for people. And so we've asked the community groups to help us with the research to understand what the history of these places were. We've then asked the artists, local artists, to come up with lighting solutions that might change the nature of that place to make it better for visitors, businesses, and the residents. We've then asked students at the interior design course at the university to help design and bring into reality that artist's vision. And then we've asked the lighting department in the council to bring that through into something they can sustain. Hideously complicated, but ultimately sustainable. You could go in there, do the works, the light bulb would break, no one would repair it. If you design it in this way, in a community-based way, you get a result that is sustained and cared for, and the residents will complain when it goes wrong. So, to finish up, well, one more thing. Interpretation, a vital part of what we do. As I need my 2-minute sign, I'm going to finish up on conflict in a larger way. Where do things go wrong? Because we're not in utopia in Edinburgh. Things do go wrong regularly. This is an example. This is the Royal High School on Colton Hill. It's our equivalent to St George's Hall. And a developer wants to stick a hotel in it by sticking 2 large wings on the outside. You only get an idea there. Again, my image has been messed up, but you can see the red on each side. Now, what happened here, quite simply, was that communication was not effective. People did not talk to each other. Every year, we look at about 10 or 12 cases in the planning system. We do not engage deeply the planning system because there are listed buildings and conservation area experts already working within the city. We only look at those which will affect outstanding universal value. And in doing this, we usually avoid conflict. We talk early, we say this is how your development can support OUV, this is how it might impact OUV, and 9 times out of 10, in fact more like 20 times out of 21 times, the right thing happens. The developer changes their plan, adjusts it, and comes up with something that's acceptable or even positive. In this instance, they ignored all advice, and that advice was given over weeks of my time and my team's time to support them and help them think differently. But ultimately, they chose to go another direction, and the result is that if this goes through as a hotel, we probably deserve to lose our status. Thank you.